This video is to compare the different softwares, Blender and Autodesk Maya. Before I actually begin this comparison of each section that I'll put down into 12 points, I would like to let people know that I am a Blender user. I prefer Blender, but this video is to keep things professional. Therefore, I cannot be biased in this video. Otherwise, it will be unfair, and I will not be criticizing any of these software that is in question in this video. I will also like to say that I have not yet used Autodesk Maya 2017, and just been going through it for the last couple of days. It is completely different in terms of what you can do in comparison to Autodesk Maya 2016 edition. The 12 points I've got for this video is point 1. Well, there's 12 points actually. We're going to start with navigation and user interface, timeline, frames per second and animation, physics and effects, usage, UV mapping and texturing, smoothing, rendering, game engine, support, hotkeys, rigging and composition. So to begin with, we're going to look at navigation and user interface. For those who do not know what that means, navigation is how you navigate around your scene. For Autodesk Maya, to navigate around your scene, hold down the left Alt key and then press the left mouse button, hold it down, and that allows you to rotate around your scene. The left Alt key and the middle mouse button allows you to pan around your scene. And the scroll wheel allows you to zoom in and out. You can also hold down the left Alt key and press the right mouse button to zoom in and out as well. In Blender, the middle mouse button allows you to rotate. You do not need to hold down any keys in order to do this. Scroll wheel allows you to zoom in and out, but so does the left control and the middle mouse button. And the left shift key and the middle mouse button allows you to pan. What makes this different is, when it comes to navigating around your scene, Blender primarily navigates using just the middle mouse button, where Autodesk Maya is using the Alt key with all 3 buttons with your mouse. That's your basic navigation. In terms of user interface, when we go to a program like Blender, you have your tabs over here. You can create your primitives or meshes and your curves, lamps and everything else you want to make. You also have all these various other things where you can insert your keyframes. You can adjust your physics in certain things that you got. Grease pencil for you to create 2D animations and 2D work. Archimesh, which is recent in the Blender 2.7. This allows you to create architectural features. And you also got import and export of the Unreal Development Kit. That is not all that Blender has though. Blender also have tabs over here that allows you to go through your textures, your world for ambient occlusion, environment lighting, indirect lighting, your scene, render layers, and everything you need to know about your scene in terms of resolution, frame rate, aspect ratio, anti-aliasing, motion blur, and many more things. Autodesk Maya does have things similar to Blender in terms you can add in your curves, your polygons. You also have a sculpting system, your rigging system, your animation, rendering, effects, and many more. Blender has a lot more features to offer, but they are not easy to get to. Most of it is actually quite hidden in certain things like here. As well as you click on these tabs and you can open different things like your outliners, properties. Visual properties and outliner are here. But there are other tabs as well, like your graph editor, dope sheet, UV editor, video sequencer, movie clip editor, text for script and programming, node editors for your textures, logic editor for your game engine, and there's many other things to use. And the difference between that and Maya is that Autodesk Maya does not hide a lot of things in other tabs. Although they do have a lot of things inside each windows and tabs, they are still more easily found in comparison. So for the point 1, navigation and user interface, I would give that to Autodesk Maya. Point 2 is timeline, frames per second, and animation. Take this Maya scene here for example. When I say timeline, the timeline is how long your frames run. For example, our timeline is down here at the bottom. This allows you to have objects in your scene and allows you to animate a keyframe. Blender also has a timeline down at the bottom, again for animation purposes. Just like when I said earlier about frame rate or frames per second, Blender's frame rate is right here in this tab here. No, that's the render tab. So you can see what you got, how many frame rates you can use. You can even select custom ones where you can have them at any kind of speed as you want. In Autodesk Maya, your frame rate is not present anywhere on the scene. To find your frame rate, you go down to this animations preferences and you can see your frame rate here. And Maya, from my understanding, only can render real time 24 frames per second. You can halve it, you can speed it. I never use other, but I do assume that allows you to create other frame rates if you want, like 60 frames per second and stuff like that. But usually the default is 24 frames per second. Just like in Blender, it is 24 frames per second. We're also going to get onto the animation of this now. But we're going to add in a cube in our Blender environment. We're going to add in by clicking here, add, or you can go to create, and we're adding a cube. We're just going to move that up a bit, and we're just going to move it over here. To insert a keyframe here, you can go to your animations and go insert, and you can go on location, rotation, and scale. And if you look down the timeline, we have this yellow line, and that means that we have a keyframe there. We're going to put another keyframe at 48. We're going to use a hotkey for this one, and the hotkey is location, rotation, and scale. And we're just going to bring that back down to 24 frames per second, and we're going to drag that over to the other side, and we're going to press the I key again and the same section there again. So now we go back to that. We're going to click on this end tab and we're going to change that to 48. Shows that that's the last frame. And now we're just going to play. As you can see, our cube moves. The same can be done in Autodesk Maya. what we're going to do is we are going to add in a cube. We're going to scale that cube up a bit so you can see it. Move it to the edge. Move that up. Move it to the edge. You can also insert a keyframe by going here. You can either right click up here. It does look like it has changed in Maya. But like I said earlier, that I have not used the 2017 version of Maya yet. But I know that when it comes to actually animating in Maya, you press the S key. And the S key ends up as that red tab. We're going to do the same as we did in Blender. We're going to put our keyframes in. And we're going to move that over there. And we're just going to press the S key there. Clip that. And now we can play that forward and backwards. Just like in Blender, there is no difference between how you animate in both software. Also, both softwares have a graph editor. So in terms of animation and frames per second and timeline, I probably would have to give that one to Blender on the basis that you have more options of frame rates to choose from. You probably can do the same in Maya by clicking on Other and making your own speed. But in terms of list of what you can use, it just feels like that 24 frames is the only frame rate that you have in it. The next one we're going to look at is physics and effects. Primarily we're just going to look at physics in this one. Blender's physics are located in this tab here. You have a selection of collisions, cloth, dynamic paint, rigid constraints, rigid body, smoke. This allows you to create fire as well. Fluid allows you to create water, and soft body. Autodesk Maya also has its own effects settings, which has your end particles, where you can have your soft bodies. You've got your end cloths, which is basically your cloths. You also have hair physics, which is something that Blender has in a separate system, i.e. the particle effects, and you can make hair through that. But with that, we're not going to be having this, so we're going to get rid of that. This is mainly just to talk about what kind of effects that both Maya and Blender can do. They can do exactly the same thing. Maya's probably more realistic in terms of its physics and effects. It also includes things like gravity. I know that when it comes to rigid bodies and end cloths, they need to have a gravity in order to work. Unlike in Blender, if I just click on rigid body and press play, it already falls. Now if I did the same thing in Maya, add in the cube, click on that, then I go to active rigid body, it doesn't fall. The reason it does not fall is because I have not gave it the gravity, which is in your fields and solvers. Add in the gravity, and if I play, the cube falls. I say that is one advantage that Blender has over Maya, the fact that you do not need to add in a gravity solver at all in order to make a thing fall. It's because the gravity is already present in the scene, like here. Just like in Just like in Maya, the gravities are set pretty much at the same level. We're going to actually have a look at that, just to confirm. Go to gravity. Yeah, magnitude 9.8. And its direction is negative y. Negative y is downwards, obviously. That's a difference, however, as well, when it comes to axis. In Maya, it is the x and z axis that represents left and right, back and forward. The y in this is height, where in Blender, z is upwards, which is why it's located on the z and it goes in minus. Enclosures work the same way as rigid bodies in Maya as well. When it comes to something that it's got to hit, so it doesn't fall through it, you had to create a passive rigid body for rigid bodies, and you need a passive collider when it comes to a clothed object. So, when it comes to the verdict of which software's got a better physics and effects, I would say Autodesk Maya has better physics and effects, because you can do a lot more in Maya in terms of effects. I mean, you can actually tear cloth or tearable surface, which I know is something that cannot be done in Blender. And I've been using Blender for over 6 years, almost 7 now. Which comes to my next point, which doesn't necessarily involve the softwares themselves. This point is usage. What is Maya used for? How is it used? Who uses it? I can tell you that studios like Pixar, DreamWorks, Legendary, and many more use Maya, 3ds Max, Houdini, and many other 3D programs in order to create their films. Autodesk Maya being the dominant. Autodesk Maya, however, is used more for TV and film, whereas 3ds Max, although it can be used for film and TV, which it has been used for film and TV, 3ds Max is more commonly used for video game development. But Maya is now becoming more common for that now, because of its game engine called Stingray. Blender has not been used for any major production in the Northern Hemisphere, that is. With the exception of Hardcore Henry. Hardcore Henry was a more recent film where majority of its visual effects and its composition was all created in Blender. Spider-Man 2 used Blender for animatics. In South America, there was a movie, I believe was made in Argentina, an animated movie that uses completely Blender. NASA uses Blender for simulations as well as models that people can download. So Blender is used by industry people. I call them industry people. I wouldn't know what to call them. Professionals, maybe. But I went to a visual effects festival last week in London, and the professionals there, one of them worked for a visual effects studio called Double Negative, and he mentioned about that Blender is used in the industry. Many other studio professionals who were there also have said the same thing. There is one group called 3D Annie or AMI who trains people for the 3D industry with Blender. I will leave this video at this point, as this will be made in separate parts. So I will catch you all in the next video.